Well, the Waffle House indicator is a long-term indicator. If the Waffle House closes, that means the storm is a serious storm. Usually it just continues. A lot of times you'll see people in the Waffle House and the flood waters be rising above the windows, and it goes above, actually eating their waffles underwater. Usually that's what happens. If they do close, it means that they're in the category 9. Right, and how they get around it, rhetorically speaking, is that the Federal Reserve Bank will always say they're trying to increase the inflation. They're trying to increase the inflation. With Bitcoin, of course, you're guaranteed to increase purchasing power. It's a mathematical certainty. And that's why people, especially the Gen Z and the millennials, are flocking to Bitcoin.
Well, I want to say that the correct explanation is that Bitcoin is the Waffle House of money. And that is, as we have hurricane season has clearly just begun. And the bad part of it has just begun. And Waffle House famously always stays open no matter how bad things get, except for like category 4 and 5.
Sometimes the simplest answer is the correct answer. And a lot of people ask, why are these tech stocks so high? Why is the stock market so high? And the simple answer is that it's a transfer payment. The federal government is transferring the paper money that they print into the pockets of the tech executives. It's as plain as the nose on your face, and you can see it in these numbers. For those who get transfer payments like food stamps and other government relief programs, they understand how this works. The government prints money and they give them the food stamp, and then they go buy food. Here, the Federal Reserve Bank prints the money. They give it to Tim Cook or the guys at Google or the guys over at Amazon, and they stick it in their pocket and go out and buy a yacht. But it's the exact same mechanism. It's a transfer payment. Well, the Waffle House indicator is a long-term indicator. If the Waffle House closes, that means the storm is a serious storm. Usually it just continues. A lot of times you'll see people in the Waffle House and the flood waters be rising above the windows, and it goes above, actually eating their waffles underwater. Usually that's what happens. If they do close, it means that they're in the category 9. Right, well, I remember on Wall Street, we used to talk about the difference between a successful stockbroker and a really successful stockbroker is the size of the order that you're asking for. And what you learn on Wall Street is that the thing that makes you successful is just asking for bigger orders, right? So why ask for 1,000 shares order when you can ask for 10,000 or 20,000 share order? So the only difference between Tim Cook at Apple and somebody living in a development project somewhere in the poor zone is that Tim Cook asks for big orders. He goes to the Fed and says, I want you to send me $20 billion to buy back my own stock and make my executive stock options go up. And I'm going to cash them out, by the way, like he did last week. And I make many, many billions of dollars. But they're both essentially petitioning the federal government. There's no difference between the person on food stamps who's asking essentially for $20 for a bag of Twinkies, a bag of chips. That's the size of the order that they're asking for. Tim Cook is asking for a $20 billion order, but it's the same mechanism. They're just soliciting the Fed for that free money, and they're both contributing to catastrophic economic catastrophe that we're seeing play out. 4 words uttered could have been, feed parakeets stale bread. And that would have also been interpreted as wildly inappropriate by a presidential candidate and a president in the face of this tsunami, this wall of propaganda coming from the Tim Cooks of the world, who get the transfer payments of hundreds of billions of dollars that they simply pocket, or the speculators in like Warren Buffett and Blackstone Group, who also just get a free transfer payment and just put it in their pockets, right? So, and they control the media, so it doesn't really matter what those 4 words could be. It doesn't matter what anybody says. If you control the propaganda, you control the reality of the markets. Right, and how they get around it, rhetorically speaking, is that the Federal Reserve Bank will always say they're trying to increase the inflation. They're trying to increase the inflation. And we're going to keep printing money until we get more inflation. And meanwhile, all that money that they are printing is hoarded by the banks. And Bank of America would be to know what's going on here, because they're one of the banks that hoards the money and doesn't lend it out as loans to small businesses or anything like that. As a result, you have this enormous wealth and income gap because they simply hoard the money. It's what Bank of America is saying. The money printing is creating a wealth and income gap. The language that the Fed uses, that Jay Powell and his predecessors will use to disguise the fact that this is a wholesale ripoff, is saying we're trying to create inflation. That's the lie. That is the basic Maoist lie. Once again, start talking about tapering, the expansion. As I've been saying now, going all the way back to Bernanke, really going all the way back to Greenspan. And again, the media buys it. They seem to think that that's a viable option. We know that you can't taper a Ponzi scheme. We know that there's never going to be tapering on the agenda. I mean, it's like going into some kind of hardcore prison and expecting to find a loving relationship. That's not what's going to happen. And that's what these central bankers are doing to America every day, forcibly. And but nobody seems to care. And in any other currency but the US dollar, you know, it's actually done fantastically well. If you look at a country like Argentina, Brazil, these other countries that are actually experiencing hyperinflation, you know, gold is maintaining purchasing power. I mean, the only thing you want with gold is to maintain purchasing power. That's what you get with gold. And you get it for thousands of years. You maintain purchasing power. With fiat money, you're guaranteed to lose purchasing power. That's an historical accurate truth. For 300 years, no fiat money has gone against the basic fact that you lose purchasing power. Between 98 and 100% over 300 years. None of them have escaped this. Now, with Bitcoin, of course, you're guaranteed to increase purchasing power. It's a mathematical certainty. And that's why people, especially the Gen Z and the millennials, are flocking to Bitcoin. And given the uncertainties in the fiat world and the rampant runaway inflation, one can understand why over the past 10 years, Bitcoin has been compounding at 200% a year, because it's reflecting already the hyperinflationary collapse of the dollar, in addition to being unconfiscatable, portable, more divisible, and censorship resistant, on top of its ability to guarantee increase in purchasing power. Right, well, I see what's happening in Australia. Instead of tapering, they're quarantining. They're opening camps, right? Isolation camps. They're doing these kind of imprisoned camps, and they're giving people 1 hour a day out in the yard exercise. They're turning into a penal colony from where it started. But that's a central bank move, and that's being replicated around the world. Every central bank in the world, instead of tapering, will open prison camps. That's like, well, Australia is doing it. So it's not a theory here. I mean, that's exactly what they're doing. I mean, Australia, remember, a year ago with Steve Keen on the show, their property bubble was an enormous bubble. And they kept bailing it out with more money printing again and again and again. And when's it going to pop? When's it going to pop? Well, their solution is, we're not going to raise rates. We're not going to bring sanity to the markets. There is no meritocracy. We're going to open camps.